I want to mention this. Derek McGrath's column this morning, very interesting, building up to Waterford against Limerick. The one team John Kiley didn't want is Waterford. Ciarán Carey, what do you make of that?
I'd say it could be a small bit of mind games involved there. I suppose in the past we've been able to deal with him pretty okay, but I suppose he has a point so far as if you look at both teams and if you take the last two games that they've both played, I suppose Waterford has been the most consistent in their last two games from start to finish, whereas Limerick, did enough to get over Cork, were troubled against Tipperary in the first half and obliterated and just blew Tipperary away in the second half. And I suppose if I was a Waterford player myself personally, you would obviously, look at last year's All-Ireland final and I think as a squad and as management team, they probably didn't do themselves justice on that particular day. So they have a perfect opportunity this Saturday to put the record straight around that.
It does seem that the gap between them is maybe smaller than the 11-point margin. But at the same time, Ciarán, it does seem that if one team in the country right now can make a final result bigger than the actual gap between the teams, it is Limerick. They are the most lethal team. They can go through these hot periods of form, and even if it feels like you don't deserve a hammering against them, they'll still give you a hammering occasionally.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I suppose the game against Tipperary, if you like, finding themselves in the position that they did, that was new territory for them. And in my own opinion, that was their first major exam. And, I wasn't that surprised, but I was slightly surprised that they did it as quick as they did and as the fashion that they did. And I suppose looking at Saturday, the big one for me, Saturday, is the physicality of it still. You rightly pointed out, the gap seems to be kind of tightened with a lot of the counties, but the physicality is still a big one for me with Limerick and Waterford. And if you had to pick one team that, that you'd be confident that probably would match Limerick, you're probably talking Galway. So the physicality of it, I think, could be a big factor in it this Saturday.
What do you think is motivating Limerick most at the moment, Ciarán? Do you think that there's anything maybe deeper there about this idea of them becoming one of the greatest teams of all time, or is that nowhere in their head?
No, in fairness, they're keeping nice and cool. I don't think that is even mentioned. But I suppose if you look at this year's championship, the motivation behind it, you have an opportunity to do back-to-back. Number one, and number two, at the start of the year, it took only 4 games to do that. And they're halfway there. They did it the direct route. And when you look at the other semi-final, it's a bit early to be calling it. I'd imagine they'd love a crack off Kilkenny if they got to the final. And, because they were the team that caught him 2 years ago. So it's kind of spicing up in a way that it could work to Limerick's advantage depending who gets there. But, Saturday's a massive day and I can't take that for granted.
Ciarán, the neutrals have been enthralled by the way that Waterford approached this year's championship and the way that Liam Cahill has them playing. But I'm just interested in your take on the narrative surrounding them. History is written by the winners, and they managed to beat both Galway and Tipperary with a swashbuckling, all dynamic athleticism, full of pace type of a game plan. But it has to be acknowledged as well, they were left clinging on against Galway, bar that late couple of points that just settled the final 60 seconds or so. And Tipperary had the goal chances down the stretch to beat them as well. So I guess we're looking upon Waterford as the winners of those two games, and that has completely framed how we're seeing them going into this semi-final. Yet, final quarter of both games, they're clinging on in some respects. I mean, what's your take on the narrative surrounding the way that Waterford have played the second halves in particular of those two games?
Yeah, to be fair, there's a huge change in them tactically compared to last year. And I suppose a lot of them have a lot of time to kind of fine-comb Limerick, study what they're doing, study their setup, and the best possible way of implementing your own plan. And to be fair to Waterford, they seem to be doing exactly what Limerick doing, because John Prendergast, who's their centre forward, he appears to be dropping midfield. 10 and 12 is also coming, so that gives Jamie Byrne and Peter Prendergast, to give a small bit more protection to the defence. And it appears to be Desi Hutchison that's in around the square on his own, but Callum Lyons, Shane Bennett and Kieran Bennett, they're all the half-back line. Similar to the Limerick half-back line, all comfortable on the ball and all well able to take scores from midfield or the half-forward line. And, as I said, and if Shane Bennett is playing as an out-and-out sweeper, he does a serious job, to be fair, because he's a natural hurler, great pair of hands. But I suppose the question needs to be asked then, if he's sweeping, who's going to take up Ciarán Lynch? Because I think if Shane Bennett probably goes toe-to-toe with Ciarán Lynch, I don't think he'd be physically strong enough, number one, or probably good enough, number two, to hold him. So if he's going with a sweeper, that is another question then, who's going to pick up Ciarán Lynch? So an awful lot of questions there to be asked. But to be fairness to Liam Cahill, as you rightly pointed out, they were kind of caught in the first game, but the last 2 games they've been very consistent. And if they can get off to a great start, will be very important. But as you rightly pointed out, they're inclined to leak a few goals. So Limerick will smell that. Probably their full back line isn't as steady, or probably not experienced as it should be. Prunty, without a doubt, would be a serious full back and is having a great year. Ian Kinney is kind of coming, but probably isn't there that long. The other cornerback isn't there, hasn't that much experience. So Limerick will have all that sized up, and they probably will hit Waterford at their weakest, I'd imagine, Saturday.
It's a really interesting point you make about Ciarán Lynch. Is there a world in which they position Ciarán Lynch on Bennett and try and force that situation?
You could say, well, in the past they would have tried when Ciarán Lynch probably started as an out-and-out midfield. I think they might have in the past tried Jamie Barron on him. But to be fair to Ciarán Lynch, no different to John Prendergast when you're starting at 11. You can't be looking at the game with the 90s eyes or 2000 eyes, because 11 sometimes is an 8.5 and sometimes a 7.5. So it's going to be very interesting tactically what way it goes. But obviously Waterford, from a Waterford point of view, they should see a bit of joy here, because the first game, only for the 2 goals against Cork, Limerick kind of struggled. And, and if they look at the Tipperary first half, Tipperary got an awful lot of joy from long puck out. So it'll be interesting, because a lot of pace, a lot of skill is rightly pointed out up front. So, that could be a tactic to go with too as well. Stephen O'Brien or Sean O'Brien, he could be going along with the puck outs.
Where do you see the next step in this Limerick team being tactically? Because there has been a whole host of changes since they won their first All-Ireland in 2018. What do you think happens next, and the changes that you expect to see, maybe not this season, but over the course of the next couple of seasons?
Yeah, I suppose the conveyor belt is tipping away nicely. Okay, they were caught in the under-20s, but there's still a super talent coming through there. You've young Colin Neal, you've young English, and you've young Coughlin. And, they'd push more squads as it stands now, probably in the starting 15. And I suppose they have their eye on that all the time. And I suppose the focus isn't as strong as it was on winning underage minor or under-20s. My own take really is, you don't have to win it at that level all the time. But if you're sprinkling 2, 3 or 4 coming through the academy all the time, automatically you're strengthening your squad. But for me to start the year, possibly their line mightn't be as strong. But as the year has gone on, I'm being convinced it's getting stronger as the year has gone on. So to answer your question, I'd say it's more like for like, and if it's not broken, don't fix it. So I'd imagine they'll continue on the same road that they're on.
Because that's a really interesting point you make, that it does seem that maybe when it comes to the star-studded names on the bench, it's not maybe what it was a couple of years ago. Maybe when Shane Dowling steps away, you're never going to have a sub of that profile. But from what you're saying, these players are absolutely that good, and they will soon have that level of profile.
Oh, without a doubt. As I say, young Colin Neal, I think there was a rule there this year, if you're playing under 20s, the seniors possibly, I don't think we're allowed to use the players. And Colin Neal, in my opinion, is nearly ready for the party as it stands. He's a great bit of stuff, and a very exciting player. Young English also, outstanding player from Doon, and young Coughlin, he's been kind of drafted in a few league games. So they're sprinkling them in nice and quietly, and obviously been very intelligent with the game time that they're giving them. So it's a matter of kind of jumping from under 20s to seniors and doing that in a very professional and nice, cute manner for the players. So their academy is still very strong, and there's a huge desire still in Limerick, to be kind of successful. They haven't been successful in so many years. My own opinion, you need to save hay while the sun shines. And in fairness to the Limerick squad at the moment, they can smell that there's something special for the last number of years, and that hasn't changed. They're hurling with a bit of arrogance. They have every test and every challenge has been thrown at them in the last number of years. And to be fair to them, they've answered each call. And this Saturday, it's another new test, another new exam. And, mentally they're very strong. Whereas Waterford, traditionally, when they get to this stage in the past, psychologically and mentally, they don't seem to be at the pitch where they should be. So I think the physicality this Saturday and the psychological battle with the Waterford players upstairs is going to be massive if Galway are going to fully come to the party.
Ciarán, it's a new exam for Limerick, yes, but one that they've had 3 weeks to study for, and they have an awful lot of film that they can review in terms of that Galway game and the Tipperary game. And everything that Waterford have been able to bring has been right out there because they haven't been able to do anything but leave it all on the field. So given that Waterford are going into their fourth week running, and they've been tested in all 3 games, including the Laois game, and that Limerick have come in off the back of that extraordinary second half performance in the Munster final and had 3 weeks to watch Waterford, and there'd be nothing that you would feel that Limerick or that Waterford be able to throw at Limerick that will surprise them. Are Limerick in the perfect position going into this game, given everything, all of the advantages that they have in that regard?
Yeah, I suppose there's pros and cons for that. And, you know, I've been talking to a few guys during the week, and they're saying, yeah, it's Waterford, third, fourth week, or the 5th week out in a row. What do you think of that? You know, at the start of the year, it's a huge test when you test the feet. But when you get a bit of momentum going, and you're out 2 weeks in a row, you're out 3 weeks in a row, and you're facing the 4th week in a row, you know, at the end of the day, these guys are made to perform on the field. They're serious athletes now. And, you know, the games can come quick and fast when the momentum is going well, when the spirit has gone very high, and the training has gone brilliant. You know, and I'd imagine Waterford are coming from that point of view. And to answer your question, really, I suppose, Saturday will tell the true factual tale in that. 3 weeks, it's a fair old gap, and it's a long time to manage the squad during that period, number one, and number two, to get them up for a semi-final for a Saturday night. And straight away, you know, when I even mentioned the word get up for a semi-final, that should be automatic in running through Limerick veins now. So I suppose to answer that question, you could go left or right when the game is over. Sure, if Waterford are going to win it, they're going to say, yeah, they had the momentum. And if Limerick probably don't cross the line, they are going to say, well, the 3 week gap didn't suit them. So that's the way it's going to go.
But they will have had, I guess, every opportunity to plan for the running of Calum Lyons, for example, from that wing-back position. Do you go with them, or do you maybe cheat a little and ensure that if Limerick and their half-back line, which is just so strong, force a turnover, there should be an awful lot of space in behind? What do you do with Shane Bennett? Do you go toe-to-toe with him, try and get him to defend a little, stop him getting on as much ball as he has done in the previous 2 games? What do they do with Desi Hutchinson, and I'd be interested as a defender, Ciarán, to get your take on it, because he didn't score against Galway, but he wreaked havoc. He got his just reward against Tip, getting 1-3 for everything that maybe didn't quite go his way the previous week. But he's in there on his own, and he's turning 40, 60 balls into balls he probably has no right to win, and winning them. What do Limerick do with him? Do they just go one-on-one with him, or do they have an extra man sitting there in front of him? What would you do with how Waterford are just leaving that one man inside?
I suppose, first of all, as a defence, 2 to 7, you know, that shape has to be held, you know, and if that shape is held, they'll find it extremely hard to manipulate grass in a bit of space. Desi Hutchinson, yeah, myself personally, I suppose you have to kind of incorporate a small bit of old style defending with the modern game, and myself personally, I would put someone on him to mark him, number one, and I keep the rest of the defence then holding their shape. Don't allow a bit of grass to be shown, and obviously then when the opposition are on the ball, put a serious squeeze and pressure on them so they haven't got the added advantage to kind of cock the head up and pick a beautiful pass. So, you know, tactically it's going to be huge, because as I said, Waterford appear to be doing exactly what Limerick have done in the last 3 to 4 years. So it will be interesting to see how Limerick will counteract that, and I'm sure also they would have looked very closely at the Tipperary 6 forwards, in particular in the first half, because none of them stayed still for a second. Every one of them, 13, 14, 15, 10, 11 and 12, they were zipping around the field and crossing over lateral for the first half, and actually it did cause a small bit of panic sessions for Limerick defence in the first half.
Just on that, and it has been quite a talking point in the build-up, Ciarán, the way Limerick need to hold their positions and hold their defence. Why then did Tipperary have such joy in the first half of the Munster final? Did they not hold that, or is there actually an Achilles heel to that system that Tipperary found?
Well, being honest with you, they probably got most of the joy. Okay, you had all the forwards. There was huge movement there, right? And obviously they're trying to create a small bit of confusion here, and that's fine. But myself personally, I thought they got a lot of joy when the goalkeeper kind of, if you like, traditionally kind of went long and obviously took out the midfield and nearly the half-forward line. And their ball appeared to be landing between the half-forward line and full forward line. And any time they went long, they got somebody joy out of that. So that's another huge tactic I presume Liam Cahill and the boys are looking at as well.
Yeah, if you go long and you win the puck out, I mean, it's a serious advantage. And I mean, Limerick will feel pretty confident, though, I'd imagine, defending the long puck out as well.
Yeah, and I think they've learned from the first half.
Yeah.
As I said, I didn't think they got huge protection from Willem and Dara Donovan in the first half, but in the second half, hugely it stood out for Willem and Dara Donovan were back in front of the half-back line and behind them at stages, and they came out with every second ball in the second half, and that was your launching pad. You're getting ready to attack from there. Like when you win possession to half-back line, you attacked in waves, and that's what the way Limerick go about their business.
What do you think the All-Ireland hurling final is going to be, Ciarán?
It's a fair question enough, because the game the following day is it's the making of a cracker as well, man. Stand up for that one. And I suppose the traditionalists will be kind of going for Kilkenny, whereas Kilkenny definitely have improved in the last 3 years. They've definitely improved tactically. They're kind of coming to kind of grips with the modern game. Not only that, their bench is getting very strong. And to be fair to Kilkenny, it's the one area of their game, this saying, they empty the tank. Kilkenny empty the 2 tanks every time they go out. That's number one. But I see something I see Cork, and I watched them very close in the first game against Limerick, and I suppose they had an opportunity that day to catch Limerick, because definitely Limerick underperformed, and they took off Gerard Hickerty, Tom Morrissey, Aaron Gillan and Seamus Flanagan that day. So that'll tell you the panic stations that was going on in Limerick, and Cork still didn't put him away. I suppose it's the 2 goals that changed it. But since then, I see a few little tweaks. Even that day, Patrick Collins in goals, he absolutely put Cork under severe pressure with every puck out. And of course, since then, the Donal O'Grady, since he came to the scene and he's analysing it, you can see automatically that has stopped and they're going short or going long. So if I was to kind of put money on it, I possibly could be edging towards Cork, possibly.
Cork, Limerick,
so
right.
If I'm edging towards Cork, I think you have an idea who I'm going to say for Saturday.
Yeah. God, that'll be a repeat of the semi-final in 18, and what an unbelievable occasion that was in Croke Park, with 40,000 people hopefully at that final. That will be quite the occasion, especially post-COVID and all that. Ciarán, enjoy the games, enjoy being there. It's great chatting to you, and hopefully from your perspective there'll be a Limerick final to preview.
Yeah, my pleasure, lads. Have a good day and God bless.
Cheers.